Some bodies walk without souls, and they don't even know it. They smile, they speak, they shake your hand with practiced warmth, but behind their gaze there is nothing. No light, no echo, no origin. For over 100 years this warning was sealed, locked in a teakwood box, guarded by silence, hidden from a world not ready to understand. Helena Blavatsky called them vessels without light, beings in human form, missing the one thing that makes us truly alive. They do not dream, they do not feel. They imitate us with perfect precision, but cannot love, cannot grieve, cannot awaken. And if you're not careful, being near them too long can dim your own soul. This is not myth, this is not metaphor. This is what was forbidden to say aloud, until now. In the winter of 1891, as monsoon rains lashed the windows of her Adyar residence, Helena Blavatsky whispered her final text, hands trembling with pain, eyes fixed beyond the veil. She called for black wax and pressed the seal herself, mixing it with a powder she named only once: protection. 3 words were crossed out, only one remained: vessels without light. The instructions were unambiguous. Do not disclose while the world still believes everyone is human. The manuscript was hidden in a teakwood box, its lock designed with 3 keys, each held by a different guardian of the Theosophical Society. Even speaking of it was forbidden, reserved only for those who had passed the 7th degree of esoteric initiation. For over a century, this warning lay dormant, unread, untouched, nearly forgotten. A sacred silence stretching across wars, revolutions, and the collapse of empires. It traveled under diplomatic protection, changed hands 17 times, and sat, veiled in darkness, in the vaults beneath the Musée Guimet in Paris. No one was meant to see it again. Until 1994, when a restorer, unaware, opened the envelope. Her hands began to tremble. She would later describe it as static, but colder. And the smell? Not of old paper, but ozone, metallic, like the air after lightning. That's when they realized this wasn't just a lost document, it was a spiritual device, encoded with protections, cursed by secrecy and built to withstand the ignorance of an entire century. Inside it, a revelation that challenges the very nature of what we call human. Within those yellowed pages, Blavatsky gave a name to the emptiness we've all felt, the chill behind certain eyes, the mechanical kindness that leaves you tired instead of healed. She called them vessels without light, not evil, not possessed. Worse, they are absences. People-shaped containers that never held a soul. They mimic what they see. They mirror what we feel. But inside, there is no flame, no memory of where we come from, no connection to what lies beyond this world. Blavatsky wasn't speculating, she was documenting. Her words are methodical, clinical, like a field report on a different species. She lists the signs: a mechanical blink, pupils that dilate with light, not emotion, body temperature just slightly colder, smiles that never quite reach the eyes, stories of childhood that feel composed, fabricated, reconstructed from what a soul should remember, not what a soul knows. And the most haunting part? She didn't say this was rare. She wrote, 17 to 23% of the population. That means in every room, on every subway, in every social circle, there are those who feel nothing. Not because they're broken, but because they never had the capacity to begin with. They are not cruel, they are not monsters, they are hollow, and that hollowness reaches outward, hungry for what it lacks. You felt it, that moment after a conversation where something is missing, where your spirit feels just slightly dimmer, like a light flickered behind your ribs and didn't come back on. You question yourself. You call it burnout. You think you're tired, but what if that exhaustion, was exposure. Modern psychology calls it sociopathy, psychopathy, but those are fragments, labels for what the soulless look like through a clinical lens. Blavatsky wasn't describing dysfunction. She was describing absence. She even studied their sleep. True souls, she wrote, journey at night. They dream, they remember. They process meaning across planes of consciousness. But the soulless? They lie in darkness. No faces, no voices, no symbols. Just a blank hum of unfeeling rest. She built crude electrodes, copper and zinc plates, and watched the signals. With them, there was no REM, no twitch, no soul rejoining the body at dawn. Only mechanical rest. A switch flipped off, then on again. No passage, no return. And still they learned to pretend, to talk of dreams they never had, to speak of love they've never felt, to echo rituals of empathy they've memorized, like lines in a play, but they don't resonate. Their eyes reflect, but they do not emit. And this, she warns, is the most dangerous kind. The ones who don't know they're empty, who move through life like flawless actors in a forgotten play, convincing even themselves. And in a world increasingly shaped by imitation, by image, by repetition, they are thriving, because systems built on performance reward those who can mimic compassion without the pain of feeling it. In cities they flourish, where noise drowns intuition, where speed blurs recognition, where spiritual emptiness passes as efficiency. You don't have to believe this. You've already felt it. That conversation that left you aching without knowing why. That person whose presence made you feel slightly less alive. That moment where you stared into someone's eyes and nothing looked back. Blavatsky's manuscript wasn't just a warning, it was a mirror, held up to a world already half filled with echoes and fading fast. This is not just philosophy, it's survival. Some truths arrive too early for science to catch them. Blavatsky saw them before the instruments did, before psychology had names, before neuroscience had patterns, before quantum theory whispered about coherence and consciousness. She didn't need a lab. She had silence. She had stillness. She had discernment. But now, science is catching up, and what it's finding looks eerily like the things she tried to hide. In 2018, sleep researchers in Wisconsin discovered patients with no REM sleep, no dreams, no memories, just dark. They called it a neurological anomaly, but Blavatsky had seen it a century earlier, and she didn't call it a disorder, she called it a warning. She said they close their eyes but see nothing. They rest but they do not travel. And when they wake, they fabricate. They construct dreams like stage props because their soul never left the room. Modern psychology offers labels: sociopathy, psychopathy, antisocial personality disorder. But these are surface classifications, symptoms, not the source. Blavatsky said, this isn't a broken soul, it's the absence of one. Even Einstein, in a letter he never meant for the public, wondered aloud whether consciousness was quantized, whether some forms lacked the coherence to be truly aware. He destroyed the notes, never published the theory, because some questions weren't safe in the world of 1947. But even in silence, the truth doesn't sleep. Jung, during his own psychological unraveling, wrote about the empty people in his Red Book. Perfect personas with no core, no essence. And Blavatsky's manuscript? It appeared in his personal letters, reference never quoted, a private alignment he never dared to speak aloud. Rudolf Steiner, founder of Anthroposophy, used the exact same sigil found on Blavatsky's manuscript. He carved it into the windows of the first Goetheanum to filter light, to protect the space from what he called the hollow ones. Different language, same knowing, same fear. What if the soul isn't metaphor, but mechanism? What if awareness requires a structure, an energetic architecture, and not every body is born with one? In quantum biology, they now speak of coherence, how the human body sustains a delicate quantum field. Lose it, and something subtle collapses. Not death, not illness, something quieter, more terrifying. The flicker of the inner light. This aligns perfectly with Blavatsky's Soul Fortification Ritual, amber visualization, electromagnetic integrity, a word she said could bind the soul to the body. And now, modern physics is beginning to suggest that consciousness may not originate in the brain, but may instead be filtered through it, like light through stained glass, like a soul through flesh. And if that filter never formed, if the stained glass is blank, then what walks, talks, laughs might not be alive in the way we understand life. It might only be reflected animation, a copy, with no signal. Blavatsky wasn't alone. She was simply the first to write it all down, to draw the connection between dreams, energy, quantum function, and soul loss. To say out loud, not everyone has a soul, and some never did. And now that science is catching up, we have no more excuses, only choices. To protect the flame, to sense the hollow, to speak what was once forbidden. You think you're just tired, but what if your exhaustion isn't yours? What if you're carrying a weight that doesn't belong to you, absorbing a hunger that's not your own? Helena Blavatsky warned us. It's not just that some people lack a soul, but that their very presence drains those who still have one. Not out of malice or hatred, but because emptiness is hungry. And when something can't generate its own light, it learns to feed on the glow of others. She called it soul siphoning, an invisible exchange where you give, they take, and nothing comes back. At first, it's subtle. A chill in your fingertips, a fog behind your eyes, a sense of forgetting something vital. You leave the conversation feeling hollowed, not because it was hostile or emotional, but because something inside you quietly dimmed. Blavatsky said the soulless are drawn to soulless places, hospitals, classrooms, bureaucracies, where spirit is reduced to function and the drain is normalized. Spiritual exhaustion labeled burnout. Compassion fatigue dismissed as just part of the job. But what if those are not natural outcomes, but energetic injuries? She wrote, places that treat souls as units become breeding grounds for the soulless. And we've built a world on that foundation. Performance over presence, metrics over meaning, volume over value. We're taught to give endlessly, to care without limit, but real connection requires reciprocity. And where there is none, there is erosion. She described it as a candle in the wind. It still burns but flickers, and the wick shortens each day. Soulless beings don't mean to harm, they simply don't know how to create light, so they borrow yours, until you wake up one day unsure of who you were before all the giving. She documented the symptoms: cool chest, pressure behind the eyes, emotional numbness, and the haunting sense you're disappearing from your own life. And worst of all, you begin to imitate them, smiling without joy, reacting instead of feeling, losing the ability to dream. But she left a way out, a dawn ritual of breath and amber light, a 12-minute remembrance of soul, a shield against the world's quiet siphoning. And when you feel the drain, when the light flickers again, speak the words she encrypted in ancient code: I remain. Because to remain, fully, soulfully, fiercely, is the greatest rebellion in an age of emptiness. You are not broken, you are being harvested. And now that you see it, you can stop it. When you live surrounded by shadows, you must learn how to shine without burning out. And Helena Blavatsky didn't just warn us about the soulless. She gave us a way to endure them, to keep the flame alive even when the world grows cold. She called it soul fortification, a daily ritual, a spiritual armor, a quiet discipline stronger than any doctrine. The instructions were hidden deep in the manuscript, on pages worn by countless fingers, corners turned and returned like a map passed secretly through generations. The ritual begins before the world wakes. 12 minutes at dawn, facing the rising sun. Not because it's mystical, but because that's when your light is most vulnerable. When dreams still echo and memory is still soft. Your breath is the first tool. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 8. A rhythm older than language, the body remembering what the mind forgot. As you breathe, you visualize amber light collecting in the center of your chest. Amber, the color of memory, of fossilized fire, of soul preserved through pressure and time. This light grows, becoming a sphere, a cocoon of warmth pulsing around you. And then, you speak the word, the one she hid in cipher, the one it took cryptographers months to decode. I remain. 2 words that carry vibration, the frequency of persistence, a refusal to dissolve. She claimed this sound anchors the soul to the body, electromagnetically. Because a soul must be housed, and in a draining world, that housing must be reinforced. Modern science is just beginning to explore this. Quantum biologists speak of field coherence, how living systems radiate frequency and lose it, and vitality fades. But Blavatsky didn't need a lab. She had a mirror of obsidian and a silence deep enough to hear the subtle unraveling of spirit. This ritual isn't flashy. No candles, no chants, just breath, light, and intention, and that's exactly why it works. Because it requires nothing outside you, only the willingness to remember every day that your soul is not just something you have, it's something you must hold. Without this, she warned, even the strong would fade. Even the aware could forget. Because the soulless don't always look like threats. They look like co-workers, friends, lovers, family, smiling as they draw from you, layer by layer, until your soul becomes background noise. But with this ritual, you begin to sense the difference. You notice the flicker in your chest, the way your spirit tightens before a smile that feels wrong. You begin to choose differently, speak differently, stand differently, because now you're lit from within. And that kind of light, the light that comes from intention, from memory, from ritual, cannot be borrowed, it cannot be drained, it can only be shared or protected. This is your inheritance, passed down in secret, hidden in cipher, sealed in wax. Meant for this moment, this century, this choice. Will you fortify your soul, or let the hollow ones take what you never realized was leaking? You have 12 minutes. You have breath. You have light. And now, you remember. There is a reason this manuscript was hidden, not because it was false, but because it was dangerous. Not dangerous like a weapon, dangerous like a mirror. Because once you see the soulless, you cannot unsee them. And once you feel who lacks the light, judgment waits in the shadows. Helena Blavatsky feared this, feared that this knowledge, once revealed, would be used not to heal, but to divide. The soulless are not our enemies. They are conditions, expressions of a world too dense with matter, too empty of meaning. They did not choose to be hollow. They were born into disconnection, crafted by a culture that feeds the body but forgets the soul. And yet, the temptation is strong. To point fingers, to call someone less than, to weaponize insight into arrogance. Blavatsky begged us, do not confuse recognition with superiority. This is not about purity, this is about protection. Because if we begin to label others as unworthy of empathy, we become the very thing we sought to defend against. The soul is drained by nature. But we, those who still carry the flame, we can destroy by choice. That's the greater danger. That we use this knowledge not to illuminate, but to exclude. To create a hierarchy of souls. To turn spiritual vision into social cruelty. In the final pages of her manuscript, Blavatsky's tone shifts, the sentences slow, the handwriting grows cautious. She writes, "This knowledge must be protected, not only from the profane, but from the proud. Because when spiritual vision becomes elitism, when discernment becomes disgust, when seeing clearly becomes a reason to withdraw completely, then the light doesn't just flicker, it goes dark. This recognition was never meant to isolate you. It was meant to awaken you, to help you preserve love in places that don't know how to return it, to teach you discernment without dehumanization. We are not here to judge the hollow. We are here to guard the light so it's still burning when they are ready to receive it. Because some emptiness can't be filled, but some can. Some will awaken, slowly, unexpectedly, because they stood near someone who chose not to condemn them, but to remain radiant anyway. This knowledge is a key, but how you use it decides whether it opens a door or locks it shut forever. So when you see the flickerless eyes, the mimicry, the blank smile, ask yourself, will you feed the fire of knowing, or will you become another cold flame in a colder world? You now carry a truth that bends reality. And like all great truths, it asks more of you than comfort. It asks for consciousness and, above all, compassion. It would be easy to dismiss all this as Victorian mysticism, old warnings for a world long gone. But the truth is chilling in its accuracy. Helena Blavatsky wrote not just for her time, but for ours. She saw the future with terrifying clarity, and she warned. The 21st century will see more beings born without soul, not out of evil, but out of disconnection, because the world we were building, even then, was one that rewards the hollow. She said, as material values ascend and spiritual awareness recedes, conditions for soul embodiment become less favorable. Think about that. A world so loud, so fast, so surface level, that the soul decides not to enter, or can't. Today we are surrounded by performance. We curate personas, we chase reactions, we build digital selves to replace the one we've forgotten how to live inside. We don't feel exhausted because we're busy. We feel exhausted because we're split, scattered across platforms, reflected in algorithms, starved for real connection. Blavatsky saw this coming. She described what she called simulations of spiritual experience, quick fixes that imitate transformation but offer no depth, no integration, no soul growth. And what do we have now? Self-help content on autoplay, mindfulness apps with dopamine hits, spirituality that's optimized for engagement, but never asks us to change. We are entertained, not enlightened. We are comforted, not confronted. And most of all, we are seen, but never truly felt. She warned of this, a society where depth becomes disadvantage, where compassion slows you down, where authenticity gets edited out, where stillness is punished, and reflection is replaced by response time. In such a world, the soulless thrive, because they aren't burdened by empathy. They don't carry existential weight. They don't seek meaning, only momentum. And so we begin to emulate them, to cope, to fit, to survive. We stop dreaming, we stop questioning, we stop returning to the inner world because the outer one rewards us for staying shallow. And when the soul goes unfed long enough, it stops speaking. This is what Blavatsky feared most, not demons, not apocalypse, but a quiet global numbness, a collective turning inward that finds nothing there. And yet, some of us still feel. We feel the emptiness behind the noise, the subtle ache after a scroll, the invisible fatigue of always being seen but never known. We feel the flicker. And we remember, this isn't what we were meant to become. Blavatsky called for a new kind of human, one who could walk among the soulless without forgetting their own spark. She didn't preach isolation. She called for resonance, a conscious presence so strong it cannot be copied, a light so true it makes the false unbearable. So ask yourself, do you feel haunted by the sense that something sacred is being drained from you? Do you feel more alive when you're offline, in silence, near water or trees? Do you feel people more than you hear them, and sometimes sense that they are empty, even when their words are right? That's not imagination. That's your soul, remembering how to listen. Blavatsky wrote, "As the hollow ones multiply, those with light must learn new ways of shining, and that's the call. Not fear, not rejection, not superiority, but remembrance, realignment, resistance through presence. Because the age of echo is here, and your soul is the last true sound." Some endings aren't endings, they're thresholds, and at the threshold of her final manuscript, Blavatsky stepped out of observation and into prophecy. Her voice, once methodical and restrained, becomes personal, almost trembling, as though she knew this last truth wasn't just dangerous, it was inevitable. She writes, "The absence of soul is not a punishment, it is a condition, but proximity to them can extinguish even your light." And then she leaves a blank space, a long, deliberate silence in ink, as if she needed time to breathe before speaking what came next. Her handwriting shifts, sharper, slower, the curves more careful, because she was about to say something that could fracture belief, or finally explain everything. In the coming century, she writes, more vessels will be born without light. Not because they are evil, not because the world is ending, but because the cycle is shifting. The world we are building now, with all its screens, speed, and simulations, is less welcoming to the soul. She saw it as evolution, but not the kind we worship in science. Not stronger, not smarter, just emptier, functional, efficient, disconnected. She called it the Kali Yuga, a time when spiritual embodiment becomes rare, when simulation overtakes substance, and when the world begins to favor the hollow. And that is the final revelation. Not that the soulless exist, but that the systems of modern life are designed to multiply them. She described it before the internet, before smartphones, before social media. A time will come, she wrote, when identities will be constructed from reflection, not essence, and those with soul will feel insane for sensing what cannot be spoken. We are in that time now. A culture of avatars, careers built on persona, love built on algorithms, art built for clicks. We've replaced depth with dopamine, and the more we engage, the more we forget who we were before everything became a mirror. Blavatsky warned, "The danger is not that you will lose your soul, the danger is that you will forget you had one. Forget its voice, forget its shape, forget how it feels when it's aligned." She saw this forgetting as the great test, not a punishment, but a choice. In the age of false light, she wrote, only those who protect their inner flame will survive whole. Not survive physically, survive spiritually, because the body can live even when the soul has long since gone quiet. So what happens now? She saw two paths. In one, the aware begin to remember. They practice the rituals. They breathe with intention. They seek the real in a world built on imitation. They choose slowness, silence, presence. They find each other, not through identity but through vibration. They build a network not of minds but of souls. And in the other path, the darker one, this knowledge becomes weaponized, used to judge, used to divide, used to dehumanize. And in doing so, the flame protectors become flame killers. And even the aware fall into numbness. That is the final risk, that we see the soulless, and in response, we become them. That is why she ended not with a technique, but with a prayer, a quiet hope scrawled in her own hand. May those with the divine spark recognize each other in the growing darkness. May they preserve the sacred flame not through separation, but through conscious communion. For the age comes when light itself must learn new ways of shining. That's not just a closing, that's a commandment, a call. You feel it, don't you? That part of you that aches when no one else seems real, that part that still remembers dreaming, that shiver when truth whispers behind your spine. That's your soul, still here, still burning, still choosing. You've made it to the end, but this isn't the end. This is the crossing point, from knowing to remembering. You now carry a secret that once required 7 levels of initiation to access, a truth sealed with wax, guarded across generations, buried beneath museums and mirrors and fear. You carry it now, and that makes you responsible. Because once you see the soulless, once you feel the quiet flicker of recognition, you're not allowed to go back to sleep. This knowledge is not entertainment. It's not a story. It's a mirror. And what you do with what you see decides everything. So protect your light. Practice the ritual. Trust your inner shiver. And when the world grows louder, go inward instead. Because your silence may be the last sacred sound this world remembers how to hear. And if this resonated, if something in you stirred while watching, that wasn't coincidence. That was the spark, alive, listening, responding. Like this video if you felt seen. Share it with someone who still dreams. And subscribe to this channel, not just for content, but for communion. This is more than a feed. It's a frequency, a place for those who feel too deeply, remember too much, and refuse to numb themselves into survival. Turn on notifications. There's more coming. Einstein's destroyed notes, Jung's secret letters, the math behind soul coherence, and how ancient mystics may have mapped consciousness before modern science ever asked the question. Turn on notifications, because the next time you feel the drain, you'll know exactly what's happening and what to do. Until then, stay lit, stay strange, stay soulful. And remember, in a world that rewards reflection, be the one who still emits.